As the Philadelphia sky was turning dusk, Caroline Morrison hurried out of the University Hospital's pharmacy department. It had been another busy day. She took her cell phone out of her white coat pocket and checked the time. There was a message from her husband Patrick: "I'll be a little late today. The research is at a critical stage. Love you." Caroline smiled and headed toward the hospital parking lot while typing her reply. In the 8 years since meeting Patrick Hamilton, her life had changed dramatically. Raised in a middle-class family from a small town, she had graduated from pharmacy school on a scholarship and now worked as a trusted pharmacist at the university hospital. Caroline was content with her life. Meeting Patrick had been fate. Working as a researcher at a major pharmaceutical company, he had been a speaker at a conference Caroline attended. The two were bound by their passion for science, and above all, their sincerity. Patrick, with his gentle personality and sharp intellect, was the perfect partner for Caroline. If there was one shadow over her life, it would be the presence of her mother-in-law, Martha. As Caroline got into her car and started the engine, her phone rang. Looking at the screen, she saw Martha's name displayed. After a moment's hesitation, she took a deep breath and answered the phone. "Hello, Martha." "Caroline," a cold voice replied. "I'm calling about Rebecca's wedding. I wonder if you could not come to the rehearsal dinner the day after tomorrow. I'd like to keep it just family." Here we go again, Caroline thought. Patrick's sister Rebecca's wedding was next week. From the beginning of preparations, Caroline had been thoroughly excluded. But what about Patrick? "I'll explain to my son myself." "You're busy, aren't you? With your hospital work?" Martha's voice was laced with sarcasm. Caroline suppressed the urge to retort and simply answered, "I understand." After hanging up, she gripped the steering wheel tightly. Martha came from a prominent Philadelphia family and was a pillar of high society. She had strongly opposed her son's marriage and still looked down on Caroline as an upstart. Patrick's sister Rebecca also took a similar attitude, treating Caroline with contempt. She had suffered humiliating treatment from both of them numerous times but had endured it for her love for Patrick. Patrick himself would occasionally reprimand his mother and sister for their behavior, but he optimistically believed that they'll understand eventually. When Caroline arrived at the apartment, she found a wedding invitation on the table. It featured a glamorous photo of Rebecca and Thomas Bradshaw, the son of another prominent family. Turning it over, she noticed a sticky note. In Patrick's handwriting, "Mom came to deliver this in person. She asked about you, but I told her you were at work. Love you." She sighed. This was her reality. The unwanted wife of the Hamilton family. But recently, Caroline had been sensing something odd about her mother-in-law's behavior. As a pharmacist, she had found Martha's recent purchases of certain herbs and chemicals concerning. The other day, when she happened to glimpse the contents of Martha's shopping bag, her professional instincts had rung alarm bells. Caroline picked up the invitation and stared at the wedding date. A feeling that something might happen occupied her mind. The next day, Caroline approached her friend Michael Waiter, who worked at the hospital. He was Patrick's college friend and now worked in the hospital cafeteria. "Michael, I have a favor to ask," she said softly after checking that no one was around. "You're working as a waiter at Rebecca's wedding, right?" Michael nodded. "Yes, Martha hired me." "Is something wrong?" "I just have a feeling that I should be careful about my drinks," Caroline said with a serious expression. "If possible, could you replace just my glass with a different one? Without anyone noticing." Michael looked surprised but quickly became serious. "Got it. I'll keep an eye out." "Do you really think something's going on?" "It's just intuition," she shrugged. "Maybe it's my pharmacist's instinct." Michael gently squeezed Caroline's hand. "Leave it to me. Patrick is a dear friend, and I respect you too. I'll help if anything happens. Thank you, Caroline returned a grateful smile. On the wedding day, Caroline was tense from the morning. She adjusted the pleats of her dress and checked her hairstyle repeatedly in the mirror. Patrick embraced her from behind. You look beautiful, he kissed her cheek. Let's enjoy today. It's an important day for Rebecca. Caroline smiled, but anxiety was swirling inside her. Yes, of course. They arrived at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, the most prestigious in Philadelphia. The hotel lobby was adorned with sophisticated decorations, with people from high society coming and going. When Patrick got out of the car and opened her door, Caroline took a deep breath. Ready? Patrick extended his hand gently. Caroline nodded and took his hand. Let's go. In the hotel's entrance hall, many guests had already gathered. People in expensive dresses and tuxedos were enjoying conversation with champagne glasses in hand. When Caroline and Patrick entered, all eyes momentarily turned to them. Whispers could be heard. She straightened her back and tried to walk with dignity. At the reception, a young female staff member smiled modestly. Your names, please. Patrick and Caroline Hamilton, Patrick answered. The staff checked the list and looked slightly confused. Ah, yes. Here it is. She pointed at the venue map. Your seats are here. Caroline frowned at the indicated location. It was the furthest corner, the seat most distant from the main table. Is there some mistake? Caroline quietly asked. Patrick is the bride's brother. The staff answered with an apologetic expression. These are Mrs. Hamilton's instructions. She specifically requested this arrangement. Anger flashed across Patrick's face, but he quickly suppressed it. I understand. It's my sister's wedding, so I don't want to cause any problems, he said quietly to Caroline. Can you bear with it? Caroline looked into her husband's eyes and smiled. For you. As they entered the venue, mother-in-law Martha approached, dressed in a luxurious silk dress with a cold smile. Caroline, I see you managed to dress properly today. Her sarcastic gaze looked Caroline's dress up and down. It has a common taste, but I suppose you did your best for today. Patrick was about to speak, but Caroline gently squeezed his arm. Thank you. It looks like it will be a lovely ceremony, she responded calmly. Martha laughed lightly through her nose and said, yes, a ceremony worthy of the Hamilton family tradition, then turned to Patrick. The main table will seat Rebecca's friends, so your seats are separate. Please understand. Patrick frowned. I'm her brother. Family usually sits at the main table. Today is a special day. Please respect Rebecca's wishes, Martha said firmly before leaving to greet other guests. Caroline and Patrick headed to their assigned seats. Several guests were already seated at the table. They appeared to be distant relatives or mere social acquaintances. Just as Caroline was about to sit down, Martha returned. You should be grateful I arranged a seat for you at all, she said loud enough for the surrounding guests to hear. Originally, these were supposed to be family-only seats. Giggles could be heard from around the table. Caroline felt her cheeks burning but maintained her composure and sat down gracefully. Patrick's face reddened with anger, and he was about to say something to his mother when music signaled the beginning of the ceremony. The wedding was conducted solemnly. Rebecca entered in a pure white dress, looking proud. Thomas Bradshaw greeted his bride with gentlemanly poise. As Caroline watched the ceremony, she occasionally noticed triumphant glances directed at her from her mother-in-law and Rebecca. After the vows were exchanged and the newlyweds exited, the reception began. Staff circulated, distributing champagne for a toast. Michael was not yet visible, but Caroline trusted him. A young waiter approached Caroline and Patrick's table and began distributing champagne glasses. The moment a glass was placed in front of Caroline, she sensed something off. With her trained pharmacist's sense of smell, she noticed a subtle scent different from normal champagne. Looking closely at the glass, she noticed a nearly imperceptible difference in color. She gently set the glass down, hesitating to drink. Patrick noticed and asked, "What's wrong?" "The scent seems strange." Caroline began, but Patrick sighed. "You're overthinking again. You worry too much about my mother," he said gently. "Look, there's nothing wrong." And with that, Patrick picked up Caroline's glass and took a sip. At that moment, mother-in-law Martha's face drained of color from across the table. She jumped up from her chair and exclaimed, "Wait, don't drink that." The attention of the entire venue turned to Martha. Patrick looked at his mother with a puzzled expression and asked, "What's wrong?" Well. Martha stammered, unable to hide her panic. Patrick looked at the glass after taking a sip and casually said, "Delicious champagne." Martha froze with wide eyes, and nearby Rebecca also stared with a shocked expression. Why isn't anything happening?" the mother-in-law muttered, her face showing anxiety and confusion. Caroline calmly observed their reactions while secretly transferring a wine sample to a small vial. The atmosphere in the venue froze momentarily, but as Patrick continued to act normally, it gradually returned to its original mood. As the wedding ambience lingered in the venue, Caroline continued her quiet observation. Martha and Rebecca were whispering to each other, occasionally glancing anxiously at Caroline. Patrick acted as if nothing had happened, chatting with relatives and friends. Caroline took out a small hand mirror from her bag, pretending to check her appearance while secretly examining the small vial containing the champagne sample she had collected. It looked like ordinary transparent liquid, but her professional instinct told her something was off. "What are you thinking about?" Patrick sat next to her and put his arm around her shoulder. "Don't worry about my mother. She's always dramatic." Caroline smiled. "I'm fine. Just a little tired." Patrick held her hand and promised, "Just hang in there a little longer. We'll leave early when the ceremony is over." The reception proceeded as planned, and while Caroline maintained an outward calm, she kept a close eye on her mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Their anxiety and agitation clearly indicated that something hadn't gone according to plan. As the night wore on and the party approached its climax, Michael, working as a hotel waiter, approached Caroline. After ensuring no one was around, he said in a low voice, "I did as you asked. I switched only your glass with a different one," he continued, pretending to serve dessert. "Before I entered the venue, I saw Rebecca checking your seat and doing something to your glass." Caroline's eyes widened. "Really?" Michael nodded briefly. "Be careful. Let me know if you need anything." "Thank you," Caroline returned a grateful smile. "I don't need anything more. I've already obtained the evidence." Michael looked slightly surprised but left to serve other tables. As the night progressed and many guests began to leave, Caroline and Patrick also prepared to depart. Martha and Rebecca didn't approach them, rather, they seemed to be deliberately keeping their distance. In the hotel's luxurious lobby, Patrick tried to say goodbye to his mother and sister, but Caroline told him, "We need to talk properly tomorrow. I'm tired tonight." When they got home, Patrick sank into the sofa and asked, "How was today?" "Mom and Rebecca's attitude was terrible, but I thought the ceremony itself was wonderful." Caroline sat next to him and took a deep breath. "Patrick, we need to talk about your champagne." "Oh, that," he laughed lightly. "I was surprised when Mom suddenly shouted not to drink it, but nothing happened, right?" "That's not true," Caroline said with a serious expression. "I want to have it tested at the hospital tomorrow. I think there was something wrong with that champagne." Patrick frowned. "You don't think Mom would?" He faltered. "I can't believe that. Why would you think she'd put something in your glass?" "Intuition," Caroline said quietly. We'll know the truth tomorrow. The next morning, Caroline woke up early and headed to the hospital's laboratory. Her friend, lab technician Jennifer, was waiting. "Good morning, Caroline," Jennifer greeted cheerfully, but her smile faded when she saw Caroline's serious expression. "What's wrong?" Caroline took the small vial from her bag. "Could you analyze this? Not just a regular alcohol test, but a toxin screening." Jennifer looked surprised but, as a professional, took the vial without questions. "Urgent?" "As soon as possible," Caroline nodded. A few hours later, Jennifer called Caroline to the lab with a grave face. "Look at this," she pointed to the computer screen. "This isn't ordinary champagne. Traces of atropine were detected. It's a small amount, but dangerous enough." Caroline clutched the data with trembling hands. "This wasn't accidental, it was intentional." "Shouldn't you report this to the police?" Jennifer asked worriedly. Caroline thought deeply. "Not yet. I need to talk to Patrick first." That evening, when Patrick returned home, Caroline had spread the test results on the dining table. Seeing his wife's serious expression, he immediately understood. "What happened?" he asked quietly. Caroline showed him the test results and explained. The champagne was laced with atropine. In proper doses, it's used as medicine, but in excessive amounts, it's a toxin that can cause severe symptoms like increased heart rate, fever, hallucinations, and in the worst case, death. Patrick initially couldn't believe it, but his face changed color when he saw the evidence. He collapsed into a chair. "No way. Mother." "Actually, I suspected something might happen before the ceremony," Caroline confessed. "I had noticed your mother buying certain herbs and chemicals recently, and her eyes were filled with more hostility than before when looking at me. So as a precaution, I asked Michael, who works with me at the hospital, to switch just my glass with a different one." Patrick was visibly shaken, showing an expression of anger toward his mother and surprise at his wife's quick thinking. "I can't believe Mother would go that far," he muttered in disbelief. "But why didn't anything happen when I drank it?" "The amount was small," Caroline explained. "You only took one sip, right? It was probably calculated to be sufficient if I emptied the glass. Also, with your build, a small amount might not have shown noticeable symptoms." Anger colored Patrick's face. Why would Mother do such a thing? He clenched his fist. Was Rebecca involved too? "Judging by their reactions, there's no doubt," Caroline sighed. "They were both expecting me to collapse. They probably intended to humiliate me in the middle of the wedding." "This is unacceptable," Patrick stood up and paced the room. "I should confront my mother and sister about the truth. This is different from their usual harassment. This is a crime." He trembled with anger. Caroline calmly said, "We should bring the evidence. Otherwise, they'll deny it," and carefully filed the test results. "Let's visit Martha's mansion tomorrow. Not in the evening, but first thing in the morning. It's important not to give them time to prepare." Patrick was surprised by his wife's calmness. "I'm amazed you're not angry. If it were me. For a long time, I've tried to be accepted by your family," Caroline said quietly. "But after this incident, I've realized that's impossible. What matters is you and me, and our future." Patrick returned to his wife's side and embraced her tightly. "I'm sorry that this happened. I can't forgive what my mother and sister did. I'll make sure they take responsibility." "Don't let anger cloud your judgment," Caroline touched his cheek. "Let's handle this calmly." That night, Patrick couldn't sleep. He was tormented by his inability to understand why his mother and sister hated his wife so much. He got up several times to stare out the window, occasionally sighing. Meanwhile, Caroline lay quietly, preparing mentally for tomorrow's confrontation. The time had come for years of humiliation to be cleared away, and she quietly strengthened her resolve. Her eyes remained open in the darkness, awaiting tomorrow morning. "Tomorrow, let's end it all," she whispered, holding Patrick's hand. The next morning, Caroline and Patrick stood in front of Martha's house. Patrick's face was tense with nervousness, but Caroline was somehow calm. "Ready?" Patrick squeezed his wife's hand. "Yes," Caroline nodded. In her hand was a file containing the sample's test results. When Patrick rang the doorbell, the butler James answered. He looked a bit surprised to see them but quickly regained his composure. "Master Patrick, Madam Caroline. Martha is still at breakfast, but—" "We've come to see my mother, James," Patrick said firmly. "It's urgent." The butler led them to the reception room. Surrounded by heavy antique furniture, the room told the story of the Hamilton family's wealth and tradition spanning generations. Portraits of family ancestors hung on the walls, and Caroline once again felt that she would forever be an alien presence in this lineage. After a while, Martha appeared in a silk morning gown. She flinched momentarily upon seeing her son and daughter-in-law but quickly composed herself. "What brings you here so early in the morning?" "Rebecca's wedding was wonderful, wasn't it?" she said, feigning calmness. Patrick looked at his mother with stern eyes and said in an unusually cold tone, "What did you put in Caroline's glass?" Martha couldn't hide her agitation, momentarily opening and closing her mouth before recovering. "What are you talking about? That's absurd." "Stop the act," Patrick's voice was filled with anger. "We know." Caroline quietly opened the file and took out the test results. "This is the substance detected in the champagne. A toxin called atropine was mixed in. Although not a lethal dose, it was a dangerous amount." Martha's face drained of color, and she was at a loss for words. As tense silence filled the room, the door suddenly opened, and Rebecca entered. She was already properly dressed and seemed to have sensed something. "What's going on?" Rebecca asked nervously, reading the atmosphere of the room. "You should know," Patrick looked accusingly at his sister. "We're talking about what happened at yesterday's wedding. About putting poison in Caroline's champagne glass." Rebecca turned pale and looked at her mother. Martha collapsed onto the sofa and suddenly changed her attitude. "Ever since you entered the Hamilton family, everything started going wrong," she raised her voice and pointed at Caroline. "Patrick was supposed to marry a daughter from a more prestigious family. Not someone like you, a druggist's daughter." "Mother." Patrick's voice trembled with anger. "Caroline is an excellent pharmacist. Regardless of her background, you should respect the wife I chose." "You don't understand," Martha said bitterly. "The Hamilton family bloodline, our tradition, your children will have half of their blood from the lower class. Are you okay with that?" While maintaining her composure, Caroline asked, "Why did you want to exclude me so badly? It's not just about class consciousness, is it?" Martha hesitated for a moment, then looked at Rebecca. Rebecca gave a small nod, and Martha continued, "Rebecca has a wonderful friend. Elizabeth from the Brown family. She comes from a good family, is well educated, and suitable for our social circle. She would be perfect for Patrick. If only you weren't here." "Wait," Patrick was shocked. "Mother, you were trying to—" "We intended to have you remarry," Rebecca spoke up. With a resigned expression, she said, "Mother, that's enough." She turned to Caroline and Patrick and confessed in a trembling voice, "The plan was a joint effort between Mother and me. But we never expected Patrick would drink it. We thought if Caroline were gone, Patrick would be happy with Elizabeth. But—" Patrick was stunned by his sister's confession, "Even you." He was dumbfounded. "You both really, to Caroline?" he faltered. Caroline calmly asked Rebecca, "Aren't you wondering why nothing happened to Patrick?" Rebecca nodded with a confused expression. "The atropine, surely." The drug dose was probably calculated based on my body weight, Caroline said quietly. Patrick has a bigger build, and he only took one sip. Also, I am a pharmacist. The profession you've looked down on ultimately saved me, Caroline spoke quietly. I noticed something was off by the scent of the glass. I had sensed something strange about my mother-in-law's behavior before the ceremony and had arranged to have only my drink replaced. Martha and Rebecca were stunned. You mean? Yes, I asked Michael to replace only my glass with a different one, Caroline explained matter-of-factly. And though my husband inadvertently drank from it, fortunately, there were no serious effects. Patrick gave his mother and sister a cold look. I will never forget this. That you tried to kill my wife. I'm cutting ties with you. Patrick. Martha raised her voice. You are my son. Shouldn't you choose your family? Family? Patrick laughed bitterly. Family is about cherishing and respecting each other. Caroline is my family. Rebecca broke down crying. We were just thinking of your best interests. Be quiet, Patrick interrupted his sister. Don't talk about my best interests. This is completely wrong. It's a crime punishable by law. Caroline placed her hand on Patrick's arm. We won't report this to the police. If the media finds out, it would damage your reputation too. She looked at Martha and Rebecca. But never appear before us again. And if you ever try to interfere with us in any way, this sample and test results will be submitted to the police. Martha cried while pleading with her son, Patrick, please, reconsider. Goodbye, Mother, Patrick said coldly, taking Caroline's hand and standing up. We probably won't meet again. As they were about to leave the room, Rebecca called out, Caroline, why aren't you reporting us? Caroline turned back and quietly answered, no matter what you think, I love Patrick. I don't want to damage his family's honor. And, the chain of hatred must end somewhere. That's what I believe. Patrick and Caroline left Martha's mansion. As they exited the front door, the spring sunshine enveloped them. Caroline took a deep breath, filling her lungs with fresh air. Are you sure you don't want to go to the police? Patrick asked. I'm sure, Caroline smiled. Now we can finally move forward. It's a new beginning, just for the two of us. Martha and Rebecca collapsed into their chairs, staring at each other wordlessly. 1 year later, in a colonial-style house in the Philadelphia suburbs. Morning sunlight streamed into the spacious kitchen. Caroline was brewing coffee while gazing out the window. In the backyard, spring flowers were in full bloom, and a small vegetable garden was beginning to sprout. Patrick embraced her from behind. Good morning. Caroline smiled in her husband's arms. Good morning. Did you sleep well? Yes, Patrick nodded. Thanks to you. After their confrontation with Martha and Rebecca, the couple had started a new life. Patrick had completely severed his relationship with Martha and was immersed in research at a new pharmaceutical company. Caroline continued her work at the hospital, and the two were living peaceful days. The incident had deepened their bond and made their trust in each other unshakable. What are your plans for today? Patrick asked, picking up a coffee cup. I have a checkup at the hospital this afternoon, Caroline answered happily. Patrick gently placed his hand on his wife's stomach. Though barely noticeable yet, a new life was growing there. Already 3 months. It still doesn't feel real. They had learned of Caroline's pregnancy 3 weeks ago. When she told him, we're having a baby, Patrick, he embraced his wife with a joy-filled expression. How happy I am to be able to start a family with you. Meanwhile, in society circles, Martha and Rebecca's reputation had plummeted. When Rebecca's fiancé Thomas learned of the events after the wedding, he broke off the engagement, and she disappeared from society. Martha was left alone in her mansion, living a lonely life in stark contrast to her once glamorous lifestyle. After breakfast, Patrick brought in the mail. "From Mother again," he sighed, showing an envelope. Martha sent letters every week, but all were returned unopened. "Maybe someday there will come a time when we read them," Caroline said quietly. "But not now." Patrick nodded and set the envelope aside. That night, as they relaxed on the sofa discussing future plans, the phone rang. When Patrick answered, it was from the hospital. Martha had been admitted in critical condition. "What should we do?" Patrick asked Caroline after hanging up. "Should I visit my mother?" Caroline took her husband's hand. "I'll support your decision. Whatever you choose, I'm by your side." After a long silence, Patrick made up his mind. "Let's go. Just to visit. I'm not saying we're reconciling." When they met Martha at the hospital, they were shocked by the aged woman's appearance. She had deteriorated so much in just 1 year. Martha wept when she saw them. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted to see you once," she said weakly. Patrick's expression was complex, but Caroline quietly said, "I've let the past go. But it will take time to rebuild trust." Martha smiled resignedly and said, "Be happy with your new life." On their way home, Caroline said, "Let's teach our child love, not hatred." Patrick looked at his wife and replied, "Your kindness saves me." 2 weeks later, they learned they were having a girl. They decided to name her Hope, meaning second chance. "Let's end the chain of malice with us." Caroline's words illuminated their new future like the spring sunshine.